Sociology and Research. This paper is aimed at assisting students sitting CAPE exams in sociology to better understand research procedures and skills. This paper is geared at achieving all objectives set by the Sociology CAPE/CXC syllabus outline in Unit 1. This paper focuses on all fundamentals of a research, and should aid candidates to better understand what is a research, types of research, constructs involved in research and how a research is presented when completed. This paper also serves as a guide to students submitting assignments which requires references. This paper shares ideas as to how best to present a reference page using the American Psychological Association format, usually referred to as APA. This paper is not geared at teaching every dynamics involved in research. It is primarily geared at sensitize its readers about the areas needed to foster a valid, trustworthy and well-prepared and presented research finding. Before you can consider conducting the research, it is prudent that a revision of grammar and punctuation be carefully considered and in some cases improved. A good research requires the skill of writing and interpretation. This level of expression requires specific techniques which in some cases require training. It is of importance that every research writes in the correct tense, present, past or future. Each section of the research requires a different tense. For example, the present tense can be reflected in the rationale of the research, while the future tense can be reflected in the aims of the research along with the research design. The presentation of data, findings and recommendation can be written in the present tense. Now let us look at the research itself. What is research? The term research can be viewed as a systematic inquiry which seeks to identify, describe, explain, predict and in some cases control the observed phenomenon or a specific issue, social or otherwise. One should note that a research is not limited to any particular field of interest. Research exists in practically every area. Research involves inductive and inductive methods. Inductive methods analyze the observed phenomenon and identify the general principles, structures, or processes underlying the phenomenon observed. Deductive methods verify the hypothesized principles through observations. The purposes are different, one is to develop explanations, and the other is to test the validity of the explanations. A research main emphasis is on valid findings. Although the statistics and charts and graphs are key in any research, the underlying focus of every research is the findings and in some cases recommendations. These are at the heart of any research. The findings and recommendations of a research are considered by many research experts as the main rationale for forming arguments and concepts on the topic being researched. Researchers use their research as evidence to persuade people to accept their arguments and ideology. Why do research? The main role and purpose of research is to help plan and gather information on a certain topic. Research helps to monitor something before carrying it out and also helps to discover new things by gathering and looking out for what others would have done. Research helps to gather and explore more into a certain topic, which helps to back up your opinions with the findings. As a result of research, you can receive up-to-date information on varying topics of interest. You may use this up-to-date information to draw valid conclusions, and to examine what is known about a particular problem. Research allows the researcher and the reader of the research to evaluate recent and first-hand information gathered during the course of a particular research. A research allows for persons to be better thinkers. Persons are able to look objectively on information and data collected and develop the skill of interpreting information/data. Research data allows individuals to make informed decisions about specific phenomenon which may exist. It can be used as evidence against ideas and ideologies having no basis. It helps the researcher or the reader to make informed choices. Research information allows potential employees to be more marketable and informative. Interestingly, research seeks to help plan and gather information on a certain topic. Research helps to monitor something before carrying it out and also helps to discover new things by gathering and looking out for what others would have done. Research helps to gather and explore more into a certain topic, which helps to back up your opinions with the findings. One of the main purposes of research is to inform, another purpose is to control undesirable activities and predict possible outcomes. There are several types of research. The research mode chosen by any researcher is dependent of the variables involved in the research. The scientific approach in research is commonly used in sociology. This research technique is considered as the backbone of a typical scientific inquiry. This approach in research has a specific set of techniques and principles designed to advance the quest of a scientific inquiry. The scientific approach is not new. It has been used by Greek philosophers to further accumulate knowledge on specific phenomenon being researched. Steps used in the scientific approach may vary, however the principles remain the same. The scientific approach to research gives the researcher several advantages. This approach has several established general rules that help us understand the world we live in. This research method fosters the collection of objective evidence which can help to reduce bias and speculation. The scientific method of research makes verifiable statements that are specific and accurate. The scientific method also shares ideas so that the wheel is not reinvented. It is productive since it makes discoveries, adds to knowledge and encourages progress. The scientific research method has several features. Let's look at each individually. 1. It is objective-based. In their approach, scientific methods are found to be quite objective. Such methods do not rely on any kind of biases and prejudices, but they are based on the foundation of scientific facts and proofs. 2. Verifiable. Scientific methods give more importance or consideration to the proper verification of the facts. Conclusions are drawn on the basis of only such facts for which there are valid and proper proofs available. In case of non-availability of such valid proofs, no beliefs or opinions will be used as basis of conclusions. In addition to the features mentioned above, there are other features associated with the scientific method of research. 3. This method of research seeks to ascertain definite information/data. Although some experts are of the view that scientific methods are indefinite in nature, but still there is content of definiteness in the processes which are being employed in such methods. It is as a result of this feature of scientific methods that conclusions drawn from such methods are found to be more reliable and valid and are considered being free from all kinds of biases and truthfulness. The scientific method seeks to determine, 4. Predictability. An important feature of outcomes or conclusions drawn from the use of such methods is that they cannot be used to guide in the present time, but on their basis, future predictions can be made by the observer. Through the properly generalized results of the scientific method, one can predict in the present that what will happen in a given situation under the known circumstances to particular object or phenomena in the future. It is because of this reason that such methods are widely used by scientists and researchers. In addition to predictability, this methodology seeks to encourage, 5. General conclusion. The conclusions drawn from making use of scientific methods consist of marked features of generality in them. This statement has two implications. First, that inductive method is being used in making generalizations out of the particular happenings or events. Secondly, principles established through scientific methods are universal in nature, by which they can be applied generally in other situations of similar kinds. The scientific method can be considered as 6. Modifiable. An important feature of results or conclusions drawn from making use of scientific methods are that they cannot be considered as final at any time. The main reason of this is that they are non-static in nature. Such conclusions are open to continuous verification and further studies. On the basis of information obtained through new innovations and experiments, the information or fact what is considered to be true today can prove to be wrong tomorrow or in the near future. Opinions changes based on the available variables and situations which exist during and after the research has been concluded. Thus, there is content of non-rigidity in the process adopted for discovering facts. Not only this, these methods do not stand in the ways of bringing desired modifications and changes in the scientific laws and principles which were being established earlier. From the features of scientific methods discussed above, one can conclude that all of them are also found in science. It is because of this reason that sometimes people consider science and scientific methods as interrogation changeable terms. However, in reality, both these concepts are complementary to each other. Whatever discovery or new insight is taking place in the scientific evolution of variables all due to the adoption of various scientific methods. While on the other hand, scientific methods help human beings to understand the facts and principles of science and to apply them in their practical life, as a result of which our life has become very comfortable and smooth in comparison to earlier times. In the scientific methods, data are being classified and then interpretations are made from them, as a result of which observer gets the chance to proper analyze the object or situation. With this, chances to get more accurate kind of results get increased. Not only this, results or conclusions drawn by making use of such methods can be verified further, as a result of which more sound and logical scientific principles and laws can be framed. Writing a research report, common components. 1. Topic of research. 2. Title of research. 3. Table of contents. 4. A list of figures. 5. List of tables. 6. Abstract. 7. Executive summary. 8. Introduction. 9. Literature review. 10. Methods. 11. Results, findings. 12. Discussion. 13. Conclusions. 14. Implications for policy, practice. 15. Recommendations. 16. Further research. 17. References. 18. Appendices, for example questionnaire. The topic of the research is different in construct than the title of the research. The topic is like a generalized area of study while the title is more of a specific area of interest. The title of the research can be likening to a thesis statement of an essay. Research topic. Research requires commitment. As a researcher, you want to make sure you are doing something that you have a great interest in doing. It is best to have a wide range of information on a topic before you choose it to do your research on. Once the topic has been chosen, the researcher now need to do a literature search/review. This review should provide empirical evidence for the research at hand. It is necessary that you note all literature using the prescribed format as suggested by the teacher/lecturer Regium LA or APA. We will discuss this at another class when we look at referencing. We will discuss this issue later in this paper. The title is usually stated in the form of a question statement or suggesting. A good research also requires at least one statement of the problem. The statement of the problem states the area of interest within the paradigm of the research. A problem statement is a concise description of the issues that need to be addressed by a problem-solving team and should be presented to them, or created by them, before they try to solve the problem. When bringing together a team to achieve a particular purpose, provide them with a problem statement. It indicates the width and depth of the research. The statement of the problem can be asked in the form of a question or a simple statement. An abstract is a condensed version of a longer piece of writing that highlights the major points covered, concisely describes the content and scope of the writing, and reviews the writing's contents in abbreviated form. Abstracts are typically 100 to 250 words and follow set patterns. The table of contents displays all the components, pages and divisions of the paper. It informs the reader of the pages in which each divisions of the paper can be found. The table of contents illustrates a sense of organization within your paper. You should ensure that your page number is correctly written on each paper. Never assume that this component of your research is not important. This component directs the reader as he or she reads your complete research paper. Although simple, the table of contents is an important section of any research paper. The researcher uses this statement as a guide in constructing the research aims, objectives and research questions. At times the researcher may choose to use a statement of the problem or a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement of prediction. It is not necessarily a principled or theoretical construct. It is not concrete. The hypothesis is a statement which predicts what will happen throughout the research. Not every research has hypothesis. A research may be designed to explore several possibilities. After constructing the statement of the problem and/or a hypothesis of the research, a series of research questions are listed by the research. Research question is a formal statement of the goal of a study. The research question states clearly what the study will investigate or attempt to prove. The research question is a logical statement that progresses from what is known or believed to be true, as determined by the literature review, to that is unknown and requires validation. After carefully structuring your topic, title, statement of the problem or hypothesis and rationale of the research, you now need to construct your research design. A research design is same as the methodology of the research. In this section of the research you are required to choose the instrument you will be using to gather information from the research area. The choice of research instrument depends on the type of research you are conducting. There are three general types of research design: qualitative, quantitative and mixed approach. This paper cannot fully discuss all the dynamics of each approach to research. This paper however seeks to underline the main principles of each approach. This paper only serves as a guide in helping you the reader to comprehend research in its simplistic form. After you have decided which approaches you will be using to conduct your research, you then have select a sample. After this sample has been selected, a research design is formulated and the field work begins. Both qualitative and quantitative research methods use samples of the population of the research area. The term sample is defined as a smaller, but hopefully representative, collection of units from a population used to determine truths about that population. Firstly, let's look at the qualitative approach to research. This research approach focuses on the why, how and the rationale for issues being researched. The qualitative research design is an inquiry approach in which the inquirer, who is the researcher, explores a central phenomenon, one key concept. The researcher asks research participants broad, general questions and collects detailed perspectives from the research participants in the form of words or images. The researcher analyzes and codes the data received from the research participants. The research creates specific themes in which interpretations are inferred in or interpreted in order to achieve outlined research aims or answer research questions. This type of research draws on personal reflections and past research findings. Mechanisms are put in place so as to minimize bias. Qualitative research focuses on the process as well as outcomes. It allows the design to emerge. This methodology also uses inductive reasoning. This research is aimed at creating a complex picture of the phenomenon being investigated. This methodology encourages the discussion of the phenomenon. This methodology also follows the scientific method of research. Qualitative research can be regarded as a socially, culturally, ethnically, racially responsive, communitarian and justice-oriented research technique. This research method demonstrates a continuous iterative, interactive, and dynamic process that keeps abreast with experiences and values through which a social researcher conducts his or her work. Qualitative research includes interviews, focus groups, observations, and documents. Material research. Qualitative researchers use these techniques in gathering data and information in order to capture authentically lived experiences of people. A social context is created by the researcher as the research progresses. It is believed that by keeping abreast with the latest technological advancements and mental models, qualitative researchers have the ability to pass the era of methodological contestation and move forward to a period of methodological innovation, in which qualitative researchers go beyond the traditional ways of collecting primary and reflexive data. This approach to research has distinct patterns and devices which governs its uses. This approach to research stresses the need and proof of validity and trustworthiness within researching an issue. Although this approach to research allows for the researcher and the reader of the research to have a thought of inference rather than facts based on evidence, if conducted appropriately, this approach will encourage unbiased assumptions and relevant conclusion to the issue being investigated. The qualitative approach to research is based on history, experience, evidence, library research, and observed situations. This approach to research is considered by many researchers as purposeful. It can be used to confirm or disconfirm situations which may exist. This approach requires the researcher to look and listen carefully to the respondents involved within the research sample. Not every assumption is based on actual responses. Some assumptions are based on reactions to questions and scenarios the researcher may try to include the research participant in. Note carefully you may use I when using a qualitative research. You will notice this practice in the sample research design and actually research highlighted further in this paper. There are several other facts about qualitative research. Qualitative research requires the researcher to reflect on theoretical perspectives on the issues being researched. Both personal and professional views can be inferred when using this approach to research. That is why as a researcher using this approach one has to always be mindful of how these ideas actually influence the data collection and analysis. The research design of a quantitative research focuses on the what, where, when, and how of the research. What is the area of interest? How will the researcher collect information on the topic being researched? The quantitative researcher also seeks to identify the where. The researcher will identify the area to be researched. For confidentiality reasons, some researchers do not disclose the actual name of the area being researched. This eliminates the possibility of the area being stigmatized negatively by the reader or possible implications for research participants involved with the research. The researcher should try to identify the area in a generalized way. The researcher has to also consider the when of the research. When, at what point in time will the researcher be conducting the research? The research design for a qualitative research is considered more detailed than the quantitative approach. What is the literature of review? Every research has a chapter referred to as review of literature. The review of literature refers published literature the researchers have consulted before and during the research. The writing of the review of literature is dependent on the writing style in which the researcher uses, example APA, MLA or Chicago. The researcher uses the aims and the research questions as a guide in the compilation of the review of literature. It is much easier for the researcher to compile published literature in accordance with the research question, aims or research questions. This strategy helps the researcher to stay focused on the topic being researched. This practice also limits the scope of the research and helps to identify the variables associated with the research. The review of literature includes scholarly journals, scholarly books, authoritative databases and primary sources. The review of literature emphasizes ideologies and theories which have been peer-reviewed. The review of literature may also include information gathered from newspapers, magazines, other books, films, and audio and videotapes. These information sources are referred to as secondary sources. What are primary sources of information? Primary sources are the origin of information under study, fundamental documents relating to a particular subject or idea. Often they are first-hand accounts written by a witness or researcher at the time of an event or discovery. These may be accessible as physical publications, as publications in electronic databases, or on the Internet. Primary source information is considered authentic and valid. They are usually considered more factual than secondary sources. Academic researchers prefer this source of information. What is meant by secondary sources? Secondary sources are documents or recordings that relate to or discuss information originally presented elsewhere. These, too, may be accessible as physical objects or electronically in databases or on the Internet. Although considered valid to be included within a research, researchers run the risk of error in their analytical process due to sources that have been unchecked or unpublished. Every researcher seeks guidance from relevant literature. Review of literature is an important component of the scientific research process. Every research, regardless of the approach used, qualitative or quantitative, remains the same following the same principles. The review of literature helps to evaluate the researcher's research question against what already is known about your subject. Through the literature review, the researcher will discover whether your research question already has been answered by someone else. If it has, you must change or identify your question. Mechanics of a literature review. Your literature review will have two components. 1. A search through the literature. 2. The writing of the review. The search for literature on your research topic is the first component of a typical review of literature. Never get to overindulge in gathering information for your research. You may run the risk of gathering too much information and when checked your primary goal of getting relevant information and data needed for your research. How can you avoid this dilemma? As you write your literature review, write the research questions and have them at hand. Plan carefully what you intend to research each time you enter the library or log onto the internet. Never try to include all the information you find. Every research has a limit in structure, contexts and/or word limit. Ensure that your research questions are not too broad. You may end up gathering too much information. At times the research may seek to gather information on topics that are rare. This may result in limited published information being available. If this problem does exist, you are being advised to widen your research topic, title and/or research questions. What if you are trying to research an area that seems never to have been examined before? Be systematic. Look at journals that print abstracts in that subject area to get an overview of the scope of the available literature. Then, your search could start from a general source, such as a book, and work its way from those references to the specific topic you want. Or, you could start with a specific source, such as a research paper, and work from that author's references. There isn't a single best approach. Important, you may never have a piece of literature which covers the research area, or a particular issue within the country in which the research is being conducted. You can gather data and information from other area or country and create possible hypotheses about the issue existing locally. It is important that as you research literature relevant for your research that you ensure that you write your notes carefully on everything, as you proceed through your research. It's very frustrating when you can't find a reference found earlier that now you want to read in full. Gathering information and data for your review of literature have been getting easy with technology. A technique being used by several researchers including myself is the use of online catalogs and books. No, I don't pay a cent. Every online catalog gives the reader an opportunity to read some of its collection. In these books and journals is valid information which can be used to create a very good and informative review of literature. You can read the abstract of books and sample pages of various chapters online taking relevant notes for your research. It is important that you do not plagiarize any aspects of your research. Always remember to give credit to the writers whose work you have used to complement your own. Failure to do this is referred to as plagiarism and goes against the Copy Patent Act/law. Write your literature review according to the research questions is organized. Write this body of literature in a sequential manner. Note carefully, at times writing can be difficult and you may lose interest in one section. It is advised that you skip the section with the problem and start another section. You probably will regain interest after a short break. After you have written your review of literature, you should review and edit your research draft. Remember to write your research for your audience. You should write according to the age group you intend to read your research. You would like your readers to be bored or confused because of your writing approach. Putting the entire research together can be very time-consuming. You need to plan how you will put your research together. You may leave your research abstract, acknowledgement and introduction for the final task. But remember to write your references as you use them. You may run the risk of not remembering which book you actually use and the year or volume of the book used. After writing your review of literature, you will be required to write a conclusion. You will need to communicate how the literature correlates with the aims or research questions of your research. While the interaction between the research question and the relevant literature is foreshadowed throughout the review, it usually is written at the very end. The interaction itself is a learning process that gives researchers new insight into their area of research. The conclusion should reflect this. Presenting your research data/information can be in varied forms. For the quantitative researcher, charts, tables and graphs are used to highlight the responses received regarding specific research questionnaire item. It is expected that each questionnaire be highlighted and discussed individually. The responses for each questions are usually calculated in both total number of respondents and percentages. All charts, tables and graphs should be labeled appropriately. It is expected that in your analysis of data, you make mention of the chart, graph or table using their assigned number. Example table 2 illustrates respondents' responses to item number 4 on the questionnaire instrument. In many instances a limit is placed on the research report. In an effort to save in time and avoid being redundant in your expression, it is being suggested that you just highlight the significant responses received for each question item. These include the highest responses and the lowest responses. You may direct your readers to see that table, chart or graph if they wish to further scrutinize your research findings. In the case of a mixed research, you may have requested in your questionnaire instrument that each respondent suggest or give reasons for their responses for a specific question item. It is being suggested that the researcher try to summarize all the responses gathered in short paragraphs. In the event that it is possible to structure a table, you may do so, however you should include all responses you gathered from the research participants. In the event that the responses are many, you may group the responses in categories and construct a small table with a few sentences as an analysis. Remember to state the percentages and number of responses you received for each question. The presentation and analysis of data usually follow each other. It would be very difficult to read or view all charts and graphs then read all analysis. Avoid using this technique. Now that you have presented your research data, you now have to state the findings of your research. The validity of the research helps to determine extent in which the findings are correct. Validity is an indication of how sound your research is. More specifically, validity applies to both the design and the methods of your research. Validity in data collection means that your findings truly represent the phenomenon you are claiming to measure. Valid claims are solid claims. Findings can be viewed as internal or externally valid or both. Internal validity is affected by flaws within the study itself, such as not controlling some of the major variables, a design problem, or problems with the research instrument, a data collection problem. On the other hand, external validity is the extent to which you can generalize your findings to a larger group or other contexts. If your research lacks external validity, the findings cannot be applied to contexts other than the one in which you carried out your research. For example, if the subjects are all males from one ethnic group, your findings might not apply to females or other ethnic groups. Or, if you conducted your research in a highly controlled laboratory environment, your findings may not faithfully represent what might happen in the real world. Here are 7 important factors affect external validity. 1. Population characteristics, subjects. 2. Interaction of subject selection and research. 3. Descriptive explicitness of the independent variable. 4. The effect of the research environment. 5. Researcher or experimenter effects. 6. Data collection methodology. 7. The effect of time. Here are some factors which affect internal validity. 1. Subject variability. 2. Size of subject population. 3. Time given for the data collection or experimental treatment. 4. History. 5. Attrition. 6. Maturation. 7. Instrument, task sensitivity. Interpretation of data. Now that you have designed the research, gathered published literature on the research topic and presented the data/information collected, the research now needs to interpret the data/information. The researcher uses the data, information collected and analyzed to make informed inferences. You may choose state a high point discovered during the research and use literature to validate the credibility of the data/information collected. Data interpretation may be the most important key in proving or disproving your research assumptions. It is important to select the proper statistical tool to make useful interpretation of your data, information collected. Should the researcher choose the inappropriate tools, the results of the research will be considered as invalid and lacking in credibility. Qualitative data interpretation tends to be more subjective in nature and many times can be influenced by the researcher's biases. Qualitative researchers are more prone to bias than quantitative researchers. Although most qualitative researchers take steps to eliminate bias in their research, see qualitative research design above, the possibility still looms. This at times may prove difficult based on the fact that the researcher receives several perspectives during observations, interviews and case studies, to name a few. The information collected by the qualitative researcher may be contradictory and may require the researcher to decide purposely what to include and what not to include within the research. The interpretation of data clearly seeks to understand the research. The goals of the research are measured against the literature, and where possible the researcher may construct more assumptions on the topic being investigated. Remember, the interpretation of data, information is different from the findings of the research. Interpretation of data summarizes the data, information collected during the research. Conclusion of the research. The conclusion of a research goes beyond the interpretation of data/information collected/gathered. In the conclusion of a research, you are expected to summarize the main points you made in your introduction and the review of literature. You are also expected to review briefly the research methods and/or design you employed. You may also be required to discuss the implication of findings, how the benefits can be used. The researcher will in this section also list the limitation of your research, due to its scope or its weaknesses. The researcher should also offer suggestions for future research. Appendices and References. The appendices and the references are located at the end of the research. After the research ends, the researcher is expected to present a sample of all instruments used to conduct the research. This may include letters, a sample of the questionnaire instrument, a sample of the observation schedule along with a list of questions asked at the interview. Each instrument or item in the appendices is referred to as an appendix. All appendixes are placed in the appendices. The references used in the research is always highlighted according to the writing style used. Some notable writing styles include MLA, Chicago and APA. The writing style may vary based on the type of research being done. It would be best if you consult with persons within your area of study about the preferred writing style before you begin to put your research paper together. Be mindful of plagiarism. Make reference to all literature you used during your paper or research. It is hoped that you have learned several fundamentals of research. It is now assumed that you can now construct a research instrument and actually conduct a typical research using this paper as a guide.